Next section is really going to be about thinking about the feelings that can come up when our kids have to talk to us about difficult situations, or our kids set a boundary. Sometimes they're setting a boundary with us, and so when we were setting a boundary, thought, oh, that wasn't the intention to be with us, you know. But and so that can happen, and then we can have an emotional reaction, as we do in lots of things when we're taking care of kids, or parenting, or caring for the kids that are important to us. And if we have a strong emotional response, if we're not clear what we should do with that, we may have a response that isn't what we intended. And so then later on we have to go and sort of undo that and explain that to the child, who may interpret your emotional response as something that you didn't mean. So if you have an emotional response and you look angry, they may assume that you're angry at them, and then they sort of withdraw, right? So, and what we were angry at, if the child is telling us about something, of course wouldn't be the child, but the child might interpret that in different ways. So having some skills and thinking about what to do to manage ourselves so that we give the intentional response that we were glad that we did when we reflected on it later is the purpose of this module. And to give you some ways to think about that, predict that, and some tools, and also some recommendations for practice, so that when it happens, you have an idea about what to do if those kind of emotions come up. So that's the goal here. So what I'd like to do, although this may be fairly unpleasant, is that first we've got to sort of put ourselves in that place. So what I'd like us each to do is, I think most of you took an index card,
yes.
And on that was not for your notes.
No, I see that. I see that.
Sorry. And so on one side of it, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to think, and we're going into nightmare territory here, right, about a child that you care about coming to tell you about some scary situation. And what I'd like you to do is, I'm only going to give you a couple minutes to do this, so just be a few sentences, but I'd like you to write it in the voice of the child, so what the child would be saying. And I want you to, when you're thinking about this, to remember that when children disclose to us, it's unlikely that it's going to be a direct disclosure. So the most uncommon one is, hi, mom, whoever, I need to tell you that something happened, somebody touched me today, right? So you could make that, if that's your nightmare, then you can write that. But the other kinds of disclosures that you might think about, one is indirect, which is that they say something like, so-and-so adult has funny looking underwear, right? So it's indirect, so they're telling you something, but they're not telling you about that. It could be that it's sort of third party. So a friend of mine told me something, so that could be a way, right? And it could also be what they call a conditional disclosure, right? So it could be I've got something to tell you, but you've got to promise me that you won't tell anybody else, right? So it might be something like, I'm gonna put some parameters around getting ready to tell you something. So when you're thinking about the kids that you're closest to, you're picking like sort of your nightmare, what you'd say. So 2 or 3 sentences from the voice of the child. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of minutes to jot that down.